Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
And now for something completely different.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 8th episode of Reality of Publishing Comics. My name is Paul Gomez, and I am your host. And today we are joined by a very, very special guest. This is legendary Mr. Ben Dunn of Antarctic Press. Mr. Ben Dunn, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me.
Now, before we get on to the show, now we usually basically are a show talking to new creators and other creators that kind of want to have tips and stuff whenever they're coming into the industry. I really, whenever I started out, studied a lot of YouTubes of how to do things, and it helped me avoid a lot of pitfalls. So I kind of wanted to give back in the same way a little bit. And that's really what this show is about. But before we get into the conversation, which the topic today is going to be publishing, I really wanted to talk to you about what y'all got going on in Antarctic Press right now.
Well, just the normal stuff that's going on. We got our anthology titles coming out on a monthly basis. We're coming up to the 300th issue of Fred Perry's Gold Digger. That's going to be a big thing for us. And we're planning a lot of new titles. We're doing a new anthology that's going to be sword and sorcery and fantasy related because, we feel that there's a market for that kind of stuff. So that's basically it.
That is awesome to hear. I do believe y'all have a Kickstarter going as well.
I personally do not. I'm not sure if AP has one. I'm not really up to what's going on as far as those things are concerned.
Well, if you're watching out there, make sure you go check out their page and check out their Kickstarter that is going on at the moment. And like I said, we're going to be talking today about publishing. I really wanted to talk about the different ways of publishing and how it's evolved throughout the years. Because nowadays, there's a lot more self-publishing people out there. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I think it's great. I mean, it's a way easier now than it was back in the day. I mean, there's all sorts of avenues for new creators to get their work out there and into the general public. I think it's fantastic. We need more, creators making new material, new IPs, creating new characters, new stories. I mean, it's fantastic.
And I really wanted to bounce back and forth between traditional publishing and self-publishing. Now, obviously, I started out self-publishing myself. Whenever I started getting into the industry, I heard and listened to a lot of advice that was on YouTube, and a lot of people said one of the best ways to do it was make your own book or build your own library. So whenever you do go shopping around, then you have something to show people. So that's one of the reasons that I started out with 3 different titles, and I've heard a lot of people do the same, but I've also heard a lot of people just stay with one title structure before approaching other publishers. As a huge publisher, do you prefer an artist to have one title and bring it to y'all, or to have kind of a library of what they've written?
That's really up to the creator. You can do as many titles as you feel you're comfortable with. You can stick with one title. A lot of creators stick with one title. Jeff Smith and Stan Sakai, they do is just one title and they stick with that. But other people, they can do multiple titles because they feel like that's what they want to do. It's really all depending on the individual. I mean, if you think you can handle more than one title, I say go for it. But if you want to just stick with one, that's also fine too. As long as you feel like there's enough demand for the title that you're doing.
Yeah, and there's so many different ways to self-publish nowadays and to go about it. After making that first comic, you can hit Kickstarter or Indiegogo. I believe there's Crowdfunder and Zoop out there right now. So there's like so many more platforms to crowdfund and help push your publishing. But I tell new creators that that's not the only avenues that you should stick with, because a lot of them kind of focus on that crowdfunding avenue. But there's also going out there to LCSs and talking to them, building up a repertoire, and going to conventions and stuff. If you were to give a new artist kind of advice if they were self-publishing, what would that advice be?
Well, the first thing is, do you have a good idea? And then the second question is to implement that idea. Basically, it really just comes down to you actually sitting down and creating the title. Because if you don't have the product, then you don't have anything to really sell. So what it comes down to is just the individual being able to create the product. I mean, it's really what it comes down to.
Right. And then we covered a few of those in previous episodes, including those ideas, and whether you were going to make an idea for yourself, something that was passionate to you, or if you're going to make an idea for the masses, if you will. Me personally, I believe there's a definite middle ground for that all, because I feel if you start writing down ideas, many creators have more than one, and usually you can find something in the middle that will hit not only something that you're passionate about, but you can feel that others would understand and be magnetized towards as well. So definitely the ideas is really the base bone of it all. I tell people after the ideas, you have to really get into the scripts and then learning and understanding art.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what it is. You have to, first of all, you have to be committed to your idea. I mean, and also you have to be realistic too. I mean, if your idea doesn't take off, then you may want to find out what it is you did wrong or modify it so that people will, you can get an audience to support your endeavor. I mean, if you want to just draw a comic for yourself, that's great. There's no problem with that. But if you want to try to convince people to buy it, then you've got to offer something that will, attract a audience to, to basically buy your book.
Yeah, and I've talked to a lot of new creators, and I told them basically my origin was in the middle of the pandemic. Me and my kids were doing it as a household project to lift our morale. So we were going to actually do the art ourselves. But when we decided that we wanted to actually sell the book is when we took it to another level. We looked for professional artists and kind of started learning the process, which it was total surprise to me, especially the length of the process, because I think a lot of new creators think that it's just going to be a month or two before their idea turns into a comic. And I think that's the biggest shock to brand new creators, the length of creating a comic. How long would you think that it would take from beginning to end if you were to make a brand new comic?
Well, that depends on the individual, really. I mean, right. Sometimes it can take years to put together a project. Sometimes somebody can bang out a comic in a week. It just depends on the speed and your commitment.
Right.
So it can vary. Also depends on the length of your story. If your story is long, it's going to take longer. If your story is short, it's going to take shorter. I mean, right. It really all depends on the individual creator as to what kind of story he wants to tell. For me, I like to try to manage at least one book a month if I can. So I try to do at least 24 to 32 pages a month, wow. If at all possible. Basically because I just, this is my living, so I got to do it.
Right.
And second of all, if you produce material, especially material that people like, then you start building your fan base, and hopefully they'll stick with you, as you produce your comic.
And that's definitely a subject that we're going to talk about in another episode is fan bases and building it up. But we were talking about artists and interior artists especially. It really depends on their skills and whatnot as to how many pages they turn in a day. So I usually tell new creators that it really depends on who you hire, but you have to have that script into place. And whenever you're publishing a comic, you have to take all that into consideration, because once you start it, that publishing time frame is probably going to be months ahead of time.
Well, it depends. I mean, if you're wanting to do this for, as actual, try to make a living out of it,
right,
then yeah, you have to commit yourself to you putting out a product. It's just like anything else. It's just like any business. If you don't have a product to sell, then you can't make any money. And
right.
But if you're just doing that just because you have an inkling to want to do it, just to get your idea out there to see if people, and you want to share your idea, and you want to get as many people as you can exposed to idea, that's fine also, as long as you're willing to eat the costs of actually doing it. Because the whole idea behind doing the comic is to sell enough comics so that you can produce your next comic, and that you can make enough money to pay for your bills and everything else like that. Because this is really what it comes down to, is your product good enough to sell enough to make enough?
Definitely. And I've got another guest. It's Brad Ginn. Now, we're talking really about publishing and how you're going to do it, whether you're going to do it individually or if you're going to seek a big publisher. I wanted to talk about submitting, and I think a lot of people figure if they submit to a big publisher. Brad, how you doing? First of all, how's it going? I don't think we can hear you. But submitting to a publisher and kind of figuring it out, I believe a lot of new creators think that once they build their comic, that they can submit it to a publisher and it's just going to take off. These are kind of some of the aspects that I want new creators to understand. It's more of a long game as opposed to something that's just going to skyrocket right away.
Well, you can only hope.
Right?
There are two things that are prevalent in the comic industry. You can either go by your reputation or you can go by the character. Okay, right. If you want to work for the big two, Marvel and DC, be prepared not to own anything. But you will be able to work on legacy characters that have a huge following. So your hope is that if you work on these legacy characters, people will like what you do enough that when eventually you leave, and it's going to happen, it happens to everyone, that you will gain enough of a following that people will follow you to whatever new endeavor you decide to do. Now, the other aspect, if you create your own character, okay, then but nobody will know it from the ground up. You have to build, you have to build an audience with it. Now, if you have a reputation and you create a new character, that definitely is a plus. Okay, so it does help, but it doesn't always guarantee success. So it really all depends on who you are and what you create. So if you want to go the route of working for the big two, then yes.
Yes,
nothing wrong with that, if that's what you want to do. But just be prepared that you're not going to own anything. Okay, it's really what it comes down to. But the payoff is that you get a steady paycheck, and you get to work on legacy characters, and hopefully you'll build up an audience.
Now you touched a little bit based on whether you wanted to work on the big two or a bigger comic company as opposed to being freelance, where you do have all the rights. I believe that whenever you're a brand new creator, you definitely need to set goals. I know that a lot of creators kind of come in with just high hopes of, and I hear this all the time. I'm going to make a comic, and Netflix is going to catch it, and we're gonna just score. One of the things I tell creators is it's more of a long game, and it's one of those games that the more you push and more you get out there, and the more you're seen, that it is more prevalent that you'll get a little bit of popularity, but it really varies on how much you're going to get. There's some people also that really are making a comic to be that springboard to get into those bigger titles and to the big two. I know me personally, I just wanted to build a comic that was I guess like an inspiration for my kids, because whenever we were doing this, it was more of a moral thing, and it just kind of took off. So
there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
A lot of great IP started off with creators doing stuff for their kids.
Right.
Winnie the Pooh, Wizard of Oz. And those are all created because they wanted to create something for their kids. So, you're in good company when it comes to wanting to do something like that. Hopefully it'll take off. That's really what that's your end game. Then that's what you need to do, is to work on create something that people can identify with and will support you on.
Right. And definitely whenever you got being a new creator, I tell people, figure out your goals, because you can't just jump into a situation and not have a roadmap to where you're going. Whenever I tell people about submitting to companies, I don't have that much experience, but I have kind of studied it because I'm in the industry. And I noticed that different companies have different submission requirements, or what they're asking for whenever you submit. I believe AP has different areas that you submit, I guess.
Yeah, every publisher has his own submissions guideline. Some of them are different than the others, only because, some of them, they have to be careful about what they get, so that, because they have ties to like other multimedia companies and stuff like that. They want to make sure that anything you send them, you can't come back later and say, hey, that was my idea. You stole it from me because I submitted it to you on such and such a date, But that's only really of concern if, you don't own the rights to your material. I would suggest that if you're going to, whatever company you decide to work for, find what their submission guidelines are and follow it to the letter.
Yes. And that's definitely one of the things I'd like to get out there to new creators. Look at their website, find out what they're publishing, because if you're building an ages book, you might not want to go to someone like Brian Polito or whatnot. If you're going to a horror book, you're probably not going to go into one of these kind of all ages kind of printing people. And I know with certain companies, again, like Unarted Press, are kind of divided, so it depends on what you're submitting to where you want to submit it. And keep an eye on that, because they're very particular about how you're submitting things. Brad, how you doing today?
I'm good, Paul. How are you? Mr. Dunn, hello. How are you, sir?
Hello, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you guys.
Brad, if you would like to introduce yourself, I know you're affiliated with Whatnot and a lot of those groups that are building up Whatnot right now.
Yeah, so my name is Bradford Gwynn. I go by Brad Gwynn. I'm the owner, co-owner, and CEO of Mass Venom Collectibles. We sell a lot on Whatnot. We sell on eBay. And we go around to cons, and that's how I got to meet Paul. We met him at the Dallas Fan Expo, and we're looking forward to doing some work with him and Jeff on one of the books.
And having y'all both here, I wanted to really talk about the evolution of publishing, and Whatnot's a big entity that's coming up on it. Mr. Dunn, how do you feel about Whatnot and Substack and these kind of newer platforms that are coming about?
Well, honestly, I don't know much about either one of them. I don't actually use either um, uh, services, so I'm I would be the wrong person to ask as far as
No problem.
thoughts on that.
No
I
problem.
know of them, but I know very little how they operate, and I know very little about how that would apply to comic book publishing.
Right. Right. And it's one of those things that like I said, nowadays, whenever you're publishing, if you're publishing on your own and trying to find those outlets, you're looking for a little bit more of the unique brands like Whatnot and Substack, doing it a little bit different ways. If you're not going to such a standardized kind of publisher like Antarctic, which I don't know if I want to say is personally, I think it's amazing to submit to the main publishing companies. I know I've submitted to one or two, and I hold them in high regards. I've always said whenever it comes to these publishing companies, they're the cornerstones of especially LCSs, which I can't say enough of. What do you think about that, Brad?
Well, I think Whatnot is a great avenue for all publishers and new artists. We're able to, the unique thing about Whatnot is that we're able to be part of a very large audience. And it's live streaming, live auctions, people bid right on the site. It's great for the newer publishing and the newer artists because it gets your product out there for a lot of eyes to see. People that can't go to cons and can't make some of the special events that you guys do, we're able to mainstream that for you on Whatnot. And there are a ton of sellers, and Whatnot's just not exclusive to comics. They do a lot of other things as well.
Right.
But that's not my part of the business. My part of the business is collectibles. So toys, cards, comics, art.
Right.
That's what we do. So as far as like the publishing side of things, I think it's a great avenue for publishing. And then you're seeing a lot of new artists or old artists that are reinventing themselves through Whatnot. Tyler Kirkham and David Nakayama and some of these other guys have their own Whatnot channels and actually put out their stuff. I think it's a great way for all publishers to be able to put their things out there with exclusives and trade dress and all of these things. It's just a great opportunity for everybody.
Right. And like I said, these main companies, main publishers are really the cornerstone. How do new creators kind of get into those conversations with these main publishers, Mr. Dunn? How do they reach out and talk to them other than submitting?
What was the question again?
How is it that a new creator could get in contact or talk to mainstream publishing besides just submitting on their websites?
Well, most publishers, like you say, have websites that have their submission guidelines. I think if you, I'm not sure what their guidelines are, but for Antarctic Press, basically we give you a submission guidelines for our various anthologies and for creator-owned material, and you just email usually a PDF or JPEGs to what you want to propose, and we take a look at it. We usually answer within 24 hours upon the submission, and we'll let you know whether or not it's something we can use. Now, the most important thing for us, we are a print-ready submissions policy. That means we don't really accept submissions that are not complete, that aren't not ready. And we are a creator-owned company. So anything you submit is yours. We don't lay any claim to the material. You're basically giving us if we decide to accept your work is basically a one-time publishing deal, and that's it. Once we're done publishing it, then everything goes right back to you. So, unless we, unless you agree to let us do a trade paperback or something of that type. The same goes with the anthologies. Anything you send to us, once we publish it and we pay you, then you're free to do it with it, whatever you want. In fact, you could probably take the story to another publisher and have them publish it there. It doesn't matter to us, So yeah,
that's definitely awesome. I wanted to ask, do y'all prefer floppies as opposed to trade paperbacks, or is there a real preference whenever it comes to those?
Well, we still do monthlies, only because as a business, that's our business model. If we don't put out monthlies on a regular basis, then basically, we'll go out of business very quick. So
Right.
we have to put out product every month in order to maintain, the cash flow to the company, in order to maintain and stay in business, basically. So we're always constantly looking for new material, and you never know when would be the next big hit. And I mean, you mentioned that. There is opportunity to get people to notice your work and have it picked up for another media.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I was saying about Whatnot, it's kind of got that pulse on the industry at the moment. Do you think floppies or trade paperbacks are flying off the shelves a little bit more nowadays, Brad?
I don't know. Like I said, I've never dealt with Whatnot, so I'm not sure. I may have to do it now, based on what you've recommended. But yeah, we go primarily through Diamond Comics, and that's where we make most of our money. They sell directly to, comic stores. Now we do Kickstarters, and we do sell direct. And I think we're in the process of trying to get other distributors, but that's basically our the way we operate.
Right. And how do you feel about that?
About floppies in general, or just?
Yeah, I mean, floppies in general. I understand that they're a little bit more hectic and harder to maintain as opposed to trade paperbacks.
Well, definitely floppies are becoming less important in the overall scheme as far as the comic industry is concerned. It seems to be going more to the way of trade paperbacks and stuff like that. But I see the value of floppies because it's a low cost way for people to enter into a new series, or and without risking like doing a huge. Because with trade paperbacks, you're usually committed to do a large number of pages to justify the cost. But with floppies, it's more of a way to build up a story inventory over a period of time and have it be monetized by people who are willing to pick it up at a low cost, so that they can read the story and keep up with it. And then once you build up a huge inventory of stories, then you can collect them to a trade paperback and just keep those in print, until as long as people are willing to buy it.
Definitely.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, Mr. Dunn. I think that I think there is a special place for floppies out there. In my business, floppies is what drives our market. We don't do very much trade paperback. The omnibus, those books.
There's a certain appeal to floppies because it's not like in the old days when they were on the newsstands and kids would buy them off the stands basically with pocket change. Now floppies can be a major purchase. They're getting to the $4 to $5 range, so it's not like a small. It's not a small purchase anymore. So people have to be careful, or people have to think a little bit more as to whether or not they want to take a chance on a new book. But even at $4 or $5 a book, as long as you give them value, I think that people will continue to want to pick it up. And also, there's something appealing about buying a comic book that may have a first appearance of perhaps a major character, later on down the line, and you were there on the ground floor. There's something inherently, kind of cool about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's harder to decide whenever you're creating comics whether you're going to make a floppy or a trade paperback. I know one of the things that I've told people is you definitely have to figure out the number of pages before you start writing that script and before you start jumping into that project that you're looking for. Whenever you are out there at the conventions, Mr. Dunn, how is it that a new creator should approach someone such as yourself or someone that's established in one of the publishing companies?
Well, we have an open door policy on submissions. I mean, if I'm at a convention, you have a portfolio or a submission in hand. It's best for me to just leave it at the table. Introduce yourself. Say what you want to do, and just give it to me, and I'll be happy to look it over. Most of the time, I'll look it over right there and then. I can pretty much tell right off the bat if it's something that I'm interested in, and I'll let the creator know that. I mean, that's pretty much it. You just got to go up and present yourself.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's evolved since you've started in this business. How people are publishing, especially the self-publishing people. I think a lot of them are hitting the Kickstarters nowadays. Do you prefer somebody who's been on Kickstarter before they approach Antarctic Press, or do you prefer that they have wait to hit Kickstarter afterwards?
It doesn't matter to us either way. If you had a Kickstarter project and it was successful, or you have you have your story ready to go, then we have no problems accepting that if it's something we like. And
Right.
if it's something brand new and you've never had it crowdfunded, that's okay as well. We don't discriminate against that. So if you want to, if you have a project that you've already funded and you want a second venue to sell your creation, then yeah, we would have no problem with getting that. I mean, the only advantage we would have as far as your creation is concerned is getting into comic stores. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Well, that's where Whatnot comes in. That's where we take what you have and we throw it to a larger audience and let them see it, where that would help take off, not just your local comic shops. Or
man, I gotta find out what this Whatnot is. I mean, how does that work?
Definitely.
Brad, is it like eBay or something?
So yeah, it is like eBay, but it's live auction, Mr. Dunn. It's I get on a camera, I throw up a book, we set it up for a certain price, and people come in and they do bidding on it. There's like bidding wars, but it's live and it's within, you have, it's not 7 days, it's not 10 days, it's not a buy it. Well, there are buy it nows in it, but the auctions can be run for 10 seconds up to 2 minutes.
Yeah, what not? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Live? Do you have to be there live? Okay.
Yes, you would have to be there live. That's the only downfall to that, is that this you have to be in the stream. But yeah. What us as sellers do is we set up our product, we take pictures of it, we load it, and we give you days ahead of time for you to be able to come in and look to see what it is that we have. So that gives you the time to come in there and be like, oh, look, there's something I want. You can do a pre-bid on it. It's amazing for sellers to do that, and it's amazing for artists and publishers as well.
Yeah, and like I tell, like I said, like I tell new creators, it's like whenever you're trying to go out there and publicize yourself, you want to find every avenue you can, whether it's a local comic shop, conventions, or whatnot. And whatnot's really been gaining steam a lot lately. I tell people it's kind of like QVC for just about everything, and yeah, they've been making waves. That's why I definitely wanted to talk about that aspect of the publishing part of it with you. I feel it's part of the publishing part. I mean, I don't know how y'all feel about whatnot being part of the publishing part, but I feel it helps out new publishers or self-published.
Yeah, to give that a shot. I'm not very photogenic though. That's the problem.
Yeah, you and me both.
If you could see what I look like, you'd be all right. We got a question in the chat. It says Madness Comics Network. It says, does it end at hard times, or does auction actually go for the highest bidder? So it doesn't have a time. The time period is what the seller sets it at. So it will end at the highest bid. There are times where I sell books for $3 or $4. Then there are times where I sell books for a couple $100. That's
not necessarily what I mean by that. What I mean is, does it go, okay, like my problem with eBay has always been, and I don't care about pre-bids because I think that's crap. That's not really an auction. My problem with eBay was that somebody could be the last bidder on the time and not the highest bidder because somebody else might have bid more. You see what I'm saying? I used to think eBay should have a feature that if somebody bid in the last 5 minutes, the auction extends 5 minutes.
It does. It does do that. So yes, now I understand what you're asking.
Okay.
So at like 10 seconds, you have a period of time where it'll reset for another 10 seconds if a bidder bids during that time period. So it'll reset for 10 to give another person another option to bid. Now, they do have a sudden death feature on there. If you're just trying to hurry and get through the books, then yes, then there's so
it's just up to the seller, basically.
Correct.
Okay. However they want to set it up. Okay, because like I said, eBay was just kind of general, and they were like, bam, it's over. And it's like, wait a minute, I would have bid more, and then they set up the pre-bidding, which I always thought, man, eBay messes enough with the numbers. They could just jive that all up and nobody knows what's up. So eBay's still trying to hit my card for something that I don't know for. I quit using them. So whatnot, everybody? What can I tell you? I'm getting back out of here.
There you go.
Whatnot has made a lot of waves in comic industry, especially lately. And like I said, they've sponsored a lot of Comic-Cons. And whenever I'm talking to new creators, Whatnot always comes up because a lot of them don't understand what it is and what's going on. Yeah. But again, Mr. Dunn, I wanted to get back to some of the stuff that you've been through. You've been in this industry for about 35 years. Is that correct?
No, 37 years.
37. And it's evolved in so many different ways. There's been so many ways to publish, and nowadays it's just so many different markets. Is there anything that you've been more interested in publishing than other stuff?
Well, not really. I mean, I do have specific things I like, myself personally, but I'll publish just about anything that looks good. That shows just shows some uniqueness or is interesting. I mean, we've done all sorts of stuff over the period that we've been in publishing. We've done anything and everything you can name. I don't think any subject has ever been approached by us. So basically for myself personally, I like stories that are they're interesting. You have good characters, good art. I mean, it's just basically the basics. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there are all sorts of venues. I mean, like webtoons is another thing that's starting to be more popular. A lot of people are finding success there.
Saw that in New York while we were there. Yeah, webtoons.
And again, that's a different way of publishing webtoons, and now they've got stuff like comics. I forget what it is, comics graph, where there it's like a Netflix but for comics nowadays. So where you're buying a subscription and you get about 20 or 30 different comics now. So it's like there's so many different ways of publishing nowadays compared to back when where there really wasn't that many printers or digital market nowadays. Do you find it harder to compete nowadays, Mr. Dunn?
Well, there's definitely more competition, but I think that's a good thing. I mean, the thing about it is that digital comics is okay. I like but for some reason I'm just an old fogey. I just prefer having something physical to hold in my hands. And I mean, in the end, when it comes to digital, I mean, do you really even own it? I mean, you can read, and then and it's forgotten. With a comic, a physical comic or a book, I can have it in my collection, and if I ever decide to revisit it, I can go ahead and pull it out and reread it at my own convenience. I don't have to worry about having to internet speed or having to click through the page and says I read something and says, oh, wait a minute, there's something I have to go back and recheck, go back to all the pages. I mean, I think it'll be a long time before digital replaces physical comics. As long as there are people who still want to come to physical comics, I think it will be
right. I definitely agree. Brad, do you feel that digital kind of aspect in your marketplace? Do y'all deal with any of that?
No, we don't. Not that I'm aware of. No, I'm new to Whatnot. I've only been doing Whatnot as a seller since March. But I've been a buyer on Whatnot for over close to 2 years now. But yeah, I don't know too much about the digital aspect of that in the Whatnot area. I can't say that any of the guys that I've talked to or have been around the other sellers of Whatnot has even mentioned anything like that. I think everybody here that I know of are floppy, and there are some graphic novels that get sold, and there are some paperback and omnibus style books that get sold as well. But a majority of what we sell, the comic guys on my end do nothing but floppies, and we slab them, we get them signed, so on and so forth. But the majority of what we do are floppies. I haven't heard of much digital, no.
Right, and it's not exactly that's more mainstream now, the digital stuff. I know I've seen it on a few tables, as in people have bought USBs and put their books on there. As a matter of fact, I've done that and sold it at conventions because I noticed that there is a little bit growing market for the digital, not as much as for the floppies. But again, whenever you're self-publishing, you really want to put that extra effort out there and try to get every customer you can.
Yep. It's the old school hand feeling, hand to eye feeling for a lot of the collectors. And I think that they'll have a hard time switching to that because they actually want to hold the book and read it and be able to, this is going to sound weird, but caress it and love it like you like a collector would, in anything that you collect. So bringing in a digital market, it doesn't affect us because we're always going to have that collector aspect to the business.
And so also, you have those competing aspects. Mr. Dunn, how do you feel about manga versus American style, kind of the Western style comics? Is there one preferred over the other?
Well, I've been a big proponent of manga for a long time.
Right.
I feel there's plenty of room for both. The market really speaks for itself. I mean, we live in a capitalist society, so the market says everything. if the manga is doing really well, then you have to ask, well, why is it people are buying manga? You know,
Yeah.
is it because of the story? Is it because of the art? Is it because why do you think Western comics are not anywhere close to beating manga? I mean, if I were to tell you 15 years ago that manga would outsell, Marvel and DC,
Right.
you would probably laugh in my face.
Right.
But things change. The either the Western comics are not fulfilling a need, that people are wanting, or in manga is, or maybe distribution of manga is better. The way they're presented is better. Maybe the way they price it is better. Those are all questions you have to ask yourself as to why, manga currently is doing so well. There's no reason that I see Western comics cannot, duplicate the success of manga. It's just a matter of being able to uh, give people a reason to want to read your book.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I mean, being able to compete one with the other, I think there's plenty of customers all around. I think that the fact that the population is growing and there's still so many people that are hooked on both styles. And whenever you were talking about how it felt, Brad, and how having a comic in your hand, that manga really gives it a little bit more in depth with the black and white and the line structures are how different than they are in the Western style. Do y'all feature manga in your stores and whatnot?
I'm sure that there are some sellers that have it. But for me, manga is really cool because you go back to like the Voltron, because I'm from the 80s.
Right.
So that Voltron and some of the other of those groups back then, to have that handheld and be able to read that'd be great. That's awesome. And all of that stuff comes and it goes on whatnot. I don't have it, but I'm sure other sellers do. We have a couple of other sellers in here now, so
Right.
I'm pretty sure that they know.
Yeah, and it's weird that whenever you're publishing that you're targeting your audience and you don't know whether to go one or the other. How do you decide on that, Mr. Dunn? I mean, how do you figure out if you're going to go towards the manga aspect or the Western style aspect? Is there a something that helps you decide that? Is it just
really?
customers?
I mean, for me as a creator, I just draw what I like.
Right.
I'm hoping that whatever story I come up with will resonate with the readers. Otherwise I have to pivot. If not, then I pivot to something else. That will attract readers. I mean, really, what it comes down to is is to just do what you feel like, that you're satisfied with.
Right.
If you're happy with it, then your hope is that other people will be happy with it also.
Yeah.
Because really, if I were to, I mean, yes, I could look and see what's popular, and say, well, I'm gonna. A lot of people do this is, just take what's popular and copy it,
Right.
or take advantage of it while it's hot, and that's fine. If you can make a few bucks doing that, then that's great. If you can get it out in time to take advantage of that, then that's great. But that's very short-lived, in my opinion. If you really want to, like you say, play the long game, then you have to create something that lasts. Something that people will, fondly remember as part of their growing up, years from now. And that's really, so you have to decide whether or not which way you want to go as far as what you want to create.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that I definitely want to cover before we end this out, because it is getting closer to that hour mark, is I wanted to talk about the timeline of publishing. again, with new creators, they kind of have that idea of, I'm going to make a comic, I'm going to get it to a publisher, it's going to get out there in no time flat. But the truth of the matter is, it takes a while to get it scheduled, to get it released, to get that press built up for it, especially if they're going to find a traditional publisher. Could you speak a little bit on that, Mr. Dunn?
Well, back in the day, that would be true, but that's no longer true now. There are, printing companies that can print your book in 2 weeks. It's just print on demand if that's what you want to do. So the timetable is really very flexible. Now for us, we have a timetable with Diamond, of 3 months. So by the time we offer a book to Diamond and the time it comes out is usually a 3-month gap. Okay, so we can offer it in 1 month, and it'll take at least 3 months for it appears in comic stores. Now with Kickstarter and crowdfunding and things like that, it depends on how fast you get the money from your crowdfunding so that you can go ahead and print your book, and then you ship it out. Now, I know some creators pre-print their books guessing by how many they think they're going to sell. Maybe they're experienced enough, they know how many they're going to sell ahead of time, so that when the money comes in from your campaign, you can ship the book out right away. You don't have, there's no, lag time. And a lot of experienced, crowdfunders do that, so it really all depends. There's really no time frame as far as, it just depends on how fast you want to put your book out.
Right.
If you want to get your book read right away, you can use webtoons or put it on a website, and people can read it right away. There's no delay. If you want to print a book, you can go through like Kablam or Print Ninja or whatever printer you decide to use, and usually you can get it out within 2 weeks to a month, and get it shipped out. So as far as the publishing is concerned, the only drawback is that if you want to get in comic stores, there's usually, you either have to sell it direct to the comic book owner, or you have to go through the distributor, in which case there's a lag time.
Right.
Or you can go through Whatnot.
Yeah.
Or you can go through Whatnot, but again, with Whatnot, you still have to print the book.
Yeah, and definitely
right.
you gotta find the sellers, and that will sell your book, which I know it's kind of a little bit difficult to do. How do people get a hold of the sellers whenever they're self-publishing books?
If you want to go through Diamond, they have a website. They have a procedure of what you have to do to get accepted through their distribution. I'm sure every distributor has that. So just all you have to do is just like publishing guide submission guidelines. Just read it carefully, follow their rules, and cross your fingers.
There you go.
Well, I will tell you, Mr. Dunn, it's a little harder for us that don't have the brick and mortar stores to be able to get the stuff through Diamond. But Diamond has you have to be one of the larger sellers on Whatnot to be able to withstand a Diamond account, because they do ask you to be able to purchase a certain amount of things in a week or a month process. I don't remember which, but it's definitely capable. We're definitely capable of doing it. It's just a matter of being that upper tier.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is now, but it used to be, people could get individual accounts through Diamond and just order the bare minimum just to get their stuff at a discount. I'm not sure what that how that works nowadays, since I don't do any retail on Diamond's end. But I mean, that used to be the way it is.
Yeah, it's not as easy as it used to be, Mr. Dunn.
Well, you would think it would be. You would
right, you would.
Right. But hey, I don't.
Right. Yeah. And before we go ahead and end out, is there anything that you'd like to talk about that's going on with Antarctic Press, Mr. Dunn?
Well, for me personally, I have the second season of Warrior Nun will be on Netflix on November 10th. So if you are interested, that's a comic book I created. So if you want to check it out, I recommend you check that out. It's a really fun series. We are, of course, doing the Go Digger 300, which will be early next week, next year, early next year. I'm working on Ninja High School, trying to get that back on schedule again, and basically doing editing for Antarctic Press. All our anthologies, horror comics, Exciting, Jungle, Planet, and Manga Z, and we have a new one called Fantasy Comics.
Awesome. That is great to hear, Mr. Dunn. Brad, how you doing?
I'm good, brother. Thank you very much for having me on the show. Mr. Dunn, it was a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you for stopping by, Mr. Dunn. We appreciate you. A legend in your time. I mean, a staple in the comic industry. I thank you so much, sir.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Call me anytime.
All right, guys. This is Paul Gomez. This is Reality and Published Comics. We hit a few minutes a little short, but I think we're good with that. We had a lot of great advice from Mr. Dunn and heard from Brad about whatnot. I hope everybody has a great day and has a great week in comics. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
The doctor is in, baby. This is Doc Blalock, and you're watching the Madness Comic Network.
America's southern border has become a war zone. Human traffickers, drug smugglers, and terrorists flow across the Rio Grande with impunity, secure in the knowledge that no one will stop them. A distant federal government lectures Americans on their privilege while punishing overworked Border Patrol agents who were helpless to stem the tidal wave of invaders and determined migrants. Second-generation Cuban-American Marcos Zamora is a military vet, more patriotic than most Americans. No longer able to ignore the chaos at his doorstep, he acts. Joined by his best friend Gus, they hit the border every night, saving lives while stopping violent drug cartels and other opportunists. The government reacts with fury at Marcos' attempts to preserve American sovereignty, deploying the full might of their enforcement agencies. But Marcos understands that the only thing the rich and powerful fear is bad publicity, and he records every encounter. Whoever he is, this private American must be stopped. Illustrated by Richard Bonk and written by Eisner winner Mike Baron, Private American is his version of Captain America, and maybe a little Punisher, taking part in this ongoing, violent, and very real battle of good versus evil in the war for American sovereignty. Grab your copy at theprivateamerican.com.
We have a secure border, and that is a priority for our administration.
The original intention of the film was just for my personal use, but I thought with it being such a unique thing that I'd like to offer it to anybody who wants to see it. Things like that. And it's just a unique film of him.
He says, I beat you. He says, they say we came in under the dead heat. He says, that's not true because I beat you. And the American said, well, he says, if you like to think so, he says, but I know the real story. He says, I know I clearly won that one.
Comic Books for Kids provides comic books to kids in hospitals and cancer centers across the U.S. It's a place where we can all work together to make sure every child has a comic book. 100% of all proceeds go towards the kids. It's about making a difference, and while they're in the hospital, allowing them to fly like a superhero, battle dragons, or rescue teddy bears. We are in every state in the country and now support over 160 hospitals. Every month, we add more.
Visit